Christy. Welcome to day 7 of my 2015 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be using this stamp set by Memory Box called Happy Holiday, and I'm going to be watercoloring it with distress inks. So I have stamped my images with VersaFine Onyx Black and clear heat embossed those so that the watercolor will stay in the lines. And I'm just going in with some different shades of distress ink. The 3 shades of green I'm using are Shabby Shutters, Mowed Lawn, and Peeled Paint. And I'm starting with the Shabby Shutters as my bottom layer, and I'm going to be letting those dry in between and building up my color. So I'm using the same 3 shades for my frog as well. So I'm just going in with some clean water to begin, and then I'll go into that Shabby Shutters and just drop in the color, just to give him a wash. So now I'm going to introduce my reds, and for those I'm using Festive Berries and Barn Door. I'm going to use those colors to color in the Santa hat and the bow on the gift, and then I'm also going to use it to color my water lily because I wanted it to look kind of like a poinsettia. So I'm just going to give the wash of the Festive Berries first, and we'll do that on each of those. By the way, the brushes that I'm using today are the Silver Black Velvet. I used the number 4 round for the greens and the number 2 round for the reds since they were a little bit smaller. So now I'm going to go back into my lily pads here, and I'm going to start to lay down some mowed lawn because I want to develop that color a little bit deeper. So I'm going to do that to the lily pads and also to my frog, and I'm going to blend that with more of the Shabby Shutters again. I want my frog to be a slightly different shade than the lily pads so he doesn't blend completely in. So I will use more of the Shabby Shutters and less of the mowed lawn just to keep him a little bit lighter. And now I'm going to take that barn door and just go ahead and deepen the shadows on my Santa hat, my ribbon, and the flower. So now I'm just going in with my darkest shade of green, which is the peeled paint, and I'm just going to really deepen up those edges and then pick up some more of that mowed lawn and blend that out, and then a little bit of the Shabby Shutters as well, just to make an even transition across the lily pads here. But it's going to really brighten them up and bring them to life, so it's worth it to take the time to add those layers. And now I'm just taking some pumice stone and adding just a little bit of shading to my white areas, the Santa hat, and also the gift. So I'll set all of those aside to dry, and I'm going to move on to my background now. So I'm just taking the stamp packaging that the stamp set came in, and I'm using that to put some broken china distress ink on, and then I'm going to spritz that with a little bit of water. And then I'm going to smush that down onto another piece of Tim Holtz watercolor paper. And I'm just going to move that around a little bit to kind of get some organic looking drops. And then I'm going to take my heat gun and dry that. You want to be sure to dry in between all your layers so that the colors don't bleed together and you get distinct shades. So next I'm taking some evergreen bough, and I'm using a little less water this time because I want the droplets to be a little bit brighter and more intense. And once again I'm going to dry that. And then I'm moving on to iced spruce. I wanted to be sure to incorporate some of these holiday colors since it is going to be a Christmas card. So I'm just tapping that here and there, just adding little accents and just drying between the layers. And then I'm going to take my mini mister that I have full of perfect pearls mixed with water, and I'm going to give the whole piece a spritz of that. And then I decided I needed a bit of a darker shade, so I grabbed the pine needles and I'm just adding a tiny bit of that just to deepen some of the color here and there. And then I'm going to grab a paper towel and just dab a little bit of that off so it's not too bright. So to assemble my card, I've got a piece of Green Acres cardstock from W+9 folded to a standard size card. And then I've taken a tiny strip of pattern paper from the Chamel 6x6 from American Crafts that I showed in my haul video yesterday. And I'm just going to go ahead and line up my watercolor piece by popping it up with foam tape. I'm lining that up on the left side of the card, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of Tombow Mono to adhere this little strip of pattern paper, because I just wanted to tie in that red and white that I'm using in, the watercolored pieces there. And then I'll just flip that over and trim off the excess. And then I wanted to show you guys that I also did stamp and white emboss a couple of snowflakes from that set, just for a subtle something in the background there. So now I'm just going to take my pieces and figure out my layout, and then I'll go ahead and start adhering them to my background. So I'm starting with this lily pad in the back, and I'm going to take some Tombow Mono to adhere that, and I'll just top that with a little gift. And then I'm going to take my middle lily pad and I'm going to adhere that with some more foam tape just to pop that up. And then I've got some foam tape on the top half of my frog, and I'll take a little Tombow Mono to the bottom of him so that I can adhere him to the lily pad. And then I'm just going to add this little Santa hat. I'm trying to adjust it so that it doesn't cover up too much of his eyes. And then I'm going to take my little lily pad and I'm going to adhere that with Tombow Mono, but I'm going to pop up the water lily on top. So I'll go ahead and add my sentiment that I white heat embossed on a little bit of black cardstock and then just trimmed out. It says Happy Holiday. And then I'm going to grab my Wingo Stella and I'm going to go over all the red parts on the card. So the bow, the Santa hat, and the flower. I'm going to do a double layer of that just to give it some shimmer. So you've got to have shimmer on Christmas cards, right? And that completes our card for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.